Hi, I'm Patty N. Welcome to my channel. I am coming to you from my recliner on a lazy Sunday. As usual, I am sharing my opinion about an event of worldwide interest, the tragic murder of Dan Markel by the South Florida Adelson crime family. I do my own research on publicly available informative websites, but in this case, I may also share some of my own personal knowledge about prison life from having had an older brother who spent the majority of his life in prison. So I have two videos that I want to make at this time. I've already prepared both of them. I thought I'd do this one first because I think it's easier. It's more straightforward. We're going to talk about Donna Adelson's life in Homestead Prison. And then the other video, which I'll make, is going to be called The Three Stooges in this case. I'll leave it up to your imagination who those three unintelligent people are, but we'll get to that next. Okay, before we talk about Donna Adelson's life in prison, let's talk about her life before prison. She and Harvey were renting an apartment at the Icon and spending $13,000 a month in rent every month. Now, to me, that's the cost of a car. Now, granted, it would be an economy car and probably a couple years old, but $13,000 every month. Donna was known to host charity events in her la-di-da high society South Beach life. She wore designer clothes. You remember her wiretap call with Charlie talking about the $250 order of lobster tails. Wendy's wedding was really lavish. They estimate the cost was probably around $100,000. In today's economy, that'd be $150,000. They had over 200 guests. They had a sit-down dinner, open bar. They had really expensive, lavish floral arrangements. They did split the cost with the Markels. Okay. Donna had a routine cosmetic plastic surgery schedule. And if you guys remember, when she was arrested, they found in her planner her appointment to have plastic surgery on her arms. Her arms. Like, I'm thinking, okay, is that like these waggles under your arms? You know, you wave hello, and 5 minutes later, they're still waving in the breeze. But that's just to give you a contrast of the luxury of that. Let me tell you about my own need for plastic surgery. I had basal cell carcinoma in my nose. They removed it. It went so deep it went into the cartilage. So as a result, this left side of my nose is collapsing and it's interfering with my breathing. You could see it more if I show you the very ugly slant up my nose. So you can probably see the narrowness on the left side. And also, this will explain why in my last few videos, you can hear me sniffing a lot. It reminds me of Sniffgate. You remember in Donald Trump's first term of office when he gave a speech, and you kept audibly hearing this, like, between his sentences? Well, I do that now. So, in case you've noticed it, that's why. But it's hard to find a, it's a complicated surgery. This part of your nose is called the ala. It's structural. The cartilage is like bones would be holding up your body. Cartilage is holding up the structure of your nose. So they would have to take cartilage out of my ear, put it in my nose, and you can't hire somebody who's done that once 4 years ago. You got to find someone who does that procedure all the time and they're good at it. Otherwise, I'm just going to end up with another botched surgery, which is what happened to me the first time, because the surgeon who removed the cancer and offered to do the plastic surgery right away first of all, he did the wrong technique. He did a flap when I needed the cartilage, and it got infected. And it's, you know, if you just have one botched surgery after another, it only makes it that much harder for the next guy. You know, I'm going off on a tangent. Never mind. My whole point is I have something that's medically necessary. Donna could just do any frivolous thing she pleased. Now, let's talk about what her life is now. It's very different. She's at the Homestead Correctional Institution for Women. I guess I'm just going to start out talking about, wait a minute. Wait a minute, not breakfast. Here we go. I'm on the wrong page. Donna's in a cell. That's one of the advantages to Homestead. Instead of the open bays, they have cells for 2 women each. So she does have a roommate, although we don't know who. Although I have a guess. Anyway, she's in an elderly block. Now in prison, who's elderly? Because conditions are so bad and they age so much more quickly than on the outside, people on the inside are considered elderly at age 50, whereas on the outside, I'm thinking to be more like, well, at least 62 or 65, like the age of Social Security, or even 70. Okay, so she's in the elderly block, but she's also partitioned off by people who are there for with a sentence of life without parole, and they're the highest. They're very high security. Okay, now Miss Queen of had to control everybody and everything. This is her control now. This is her schedule. 5 o'clock, wake up, go to breakfast. 8 o'clock, go to your bunk and have the first head count of the day. 8:30, do your assigned work, which is just like a basic chore, wiping off tables, sweeping the floor. I mean, there are some more strenuous, but they wouldn't assign them to an elderly inmate. Okay, 11:30, they have lunch. At 1 o'clock, that is inmate tablet time. They can, well, for Donna, she can message Harvey or her lawyers, listen to music. This is an extremely crowded facility, very noisy and high stress. So a lot of the elderly inmates that can afford to get a tablet, they'll listen to music to try to drown out the noise. Okay, where were we? 4 o'clock, they have dinner. 5 p.m. is their second head count at their bunk. 10 o'clock is lights out. And I mean physically, all the lights go out and that's it for the day. I remember the first time I talked about Homestead, I was telling you about all the programs they had. Apparently, recently, all the programs have been cut for probably lack of funding. And, you know, all these people that get life, and especially when they're elderly and they have more medical needs, they're a huge drain on society, money-wise, the cost of housing them. And one way that is affected is in the food they're offered to eat, because they have to feed these people on pennies a day. So you can forget the lobster tail, and later I'll give you a sample menu of what a day's food might be like. Okay, let's see, what should we talk about next? The inmates in Homestead, at least half of them are over the age of 50. I believe their maximum capacity is 668, but they currently have well over 800. So, yeah, they're crowded. I guess before we talk about their food, I thought I'd tell you about the other notorious inmates who are in Homestead. Okay, Marie Dulce, she's 66 now. She's been in prison for 45 years. She killed a man named Ed Glover. Now, if this had happened more recently in Florida, we now have a stand your ground law. She might not have even gone to prison, but what she claims is she met him when she went to buy a telephone. She then that night ran into him at a bar, recognized him. He offered to come to her house and install her phone for her. When he was there at her house, he forced himself upon her intimately. It's that R word that you're not supposed to say on YouTube. And she had a gun, and she shot him. Then she went to bed and went to sleep. And in the morning, she woke up and thought, what am I going to do with this dead bod in my apartment? So she went out and picked up a hitchhiker, and she coerced him. Now, he says she threatened him at gunpoint, but she says she offered to give him the victim's car and wallet if he would help her dispose of the body. So that's what he did, and then later he got caught because they caught him driving in the guy's car, and then he testified against her, so they gave him immunity. So now she's in prison. and she mentioned there's a article about the longest serving inmates in America, and she's one of them, and it was in a report by the Florida Bulldog, and that's where I read this, where she said she just recently got a new new roommate, and I thought, wonder if that's Donna, because they are going to try to put older people together. So that's my guess, but that's really kind of lame now to think about it. Okay, Joyce Cohen, she hired hitmen to take the life of her husband in 1982. She's 76. Denise Davidson, she's 66. She took the life of her doctor husband with hitmen. Then there's Virginia Larzalore, but I've also seen that she's in Lowell. So she also hired hitmen, but we'll skip her. Okay, Amber Wright, I remember this. I remember this case. She's only 30 now, but when she was a teenager, she and a group of her friends they didn't like this one guy named Seth. So she lured him into a mobile home where her friends were in wait with their clubs and weapons, and they beat him and shot him, and then they ended up burning the body in their campfire while they were making s'mores and singing Michael Row Your Boat Ashore in rounds. Okay, I may have made up that last part, but they did burn the body. She's there for life. Let's see. I think that's it. I had one more person, but then I also saw that she was in Lowell and not there. That'd be Christine Falling. She was a serial killer who killed several babies and toddlers while she was babysitting. I think she's in Lowell. So, let's see. Joyce Cohen. I think I already mentioned her. She hired hitmen. She also was in South Florida in the La-Di-Da High Society. So, let's see, how old is she? She's 76. She hired hitmen to take out her husband in 82. So, Donna has some like-minded potential friends there. All right, now let's talk about her food now. She has gone from lobster and whatever else to, in prison, they try to hit 2,600 calories a day. So their diet is heavy on starch, refined carbs, sodium, and extremely low on fresh fruit. Inmates can get they can spend up to $150 a week on commissary. So Harvey keeps her commissary supplied, and I'm sure she exists mostly on that, like, her tuna packets. Although she can't hoard them like she did in the Leon County jail, because they can only have X amount in their little locker box they have in their cell. Anything over that will be confiscated as contraband. Okay. All right, here's a typical menu. Breakfast: 1 cup of watery grits or unsweetened oatmeal, a small portion of scrambled eggs, or 2 sausage patties. Those are most likely a soy replacement, not real sausage. 2 slices of white bread or a biscuit, 2 packs of margarine, and 2 packs of jelly. A half a cup of a citrus drink mix mixed in water. Okay, lunch: a soy blended fake meat or 1 slice of bologna, a scoop of rice or beans, a small serving of heavily boiled vegetables. It is said the vegetables are almost like pulp. They're so overboiled. 2 slices of white bread, and 1 piece of fruit or a cookie. And I'm telling you, the fruit is really rare because that's too expensive. Okay, dinner. Dinner rotates between turkey a la king, breaded chicken patty, spaghetti with meat sauce, or a chicken leg. And I can tell you the chicken leg is the highly prized meal of all, because the meat is actually what it looks like. It is chicken, it's a chicken leg. The others are either all soy or soy enhanced. Like, say you make spaghetti sauce with hamburger, you might have a fourth of it hamburger and three-fourths is ground, what do they say, crumbled up soy hamburger replacement. Okay, they'll have probably a bigger serving of instant mashed potatoes or rice. And then they get a powdered sugar-free fruit drink mix mixed in water. That's a typical menu. Like I said, Donna is either augmenting it or replacing it with commissary stuff. But if she ever has a disciplinary action, they'll take away her visitation privileges, her phone privileges, and her ability to buy commissary for up to 3 months. So she's got a lot at stake, and I think that's why we're not seeing her having any disciplinary infractions at this point. She gets to have a visit once a month from Harvey. That's really all she has. I mean, telephone calls, she's allowed one phone call, and it has to be either 10 or 15 minutes every 2 weeks. Can you imagine that? 2 short phone calls a week and then this one visit. So I'll bet you she just lives for those visits and is not going to get in any trouble. She's going to try her best. She's going to have to do some goose stepping there. Okay, I'll talk about her cell. Her cell, she has a cellmate. Oh, we don't know who. This cell is basically painted concrete. The bunk beds are made out of concrete. They come right out of the wall. And they get an extremely thin institutional mattress. So can you imagine, she's sleeping on this little mattress on concrete. There's a metal combination toilet and sink, and one tiny locker for all her belongings, her clothes, her personal care items, her stationery, book, whatever. It all has to fit in there, and her commissary. It has to fit in that little locker. There's one exception if they have a lot of legal paperwork ongoing, like about her appeal or something. If she has accumulated a lot of that, they get to store it somewhere else in a secure office or area. Okay, metal combo toilet and sink. Okay, in prison there's an unwritten rule because there's absolutely no privacy, none. It's gone. It's out of her life now, any privacy. But when inmates go to the bathroom, they have an unwritten rule that their bunkmate will immediately turn and face the wall while they're going. And the inmate going to the bathroom is expected to give several courtesy flushes. If they're having a bowel movement, they're expected to flush immediately, during, if they make any noise. This is Donna's life now. This is her life. Courtesy flushes. I'm sorry, it's not funny. Okay, there's no air conditioning. The facility itself is located right on the edge of the Florida Everglades. If you don't know what those are, it's an extremely large swampy area. It's loaded with alligators, snakes, bugs. It's not built up. It's just miles upon miles of swampland. In fact, the highway that goes through that is called Alligator Alley because of the alligators there. So, being right next to that and having typical temperatures every day above 90 or above 100 it can reach, they don't have much choice but to open their one small jalousie window. If you don't know what a jalousie window is, this is an old Florida thing. It's they don't use them anymore because they weren't energy efficient at all, but it's like narrow slats of glass, like picture long rectangles, and they're overlapping each other when they're closed. And then when you crank them open, they all fold up, and there's no screen. So, of course, it's letting in all the bugs, mosquitoes, and when I say mosquitoes, I don't mean one or two that are buzzing annoyingly and you're hearing them when you're trying to sleep. I'm talking about swarms. Swarms of mosquitoes come in. Roaches, rats. The opposite wall has a secure door with real thick security glass for the guards to look in at them during head count and really whenever they please. They're kind of like animals in the zoo on display in their cage. But anyway, my point was there's no crossbreeds. There's no crossbreeds because of the solid door on the other side. So they're allowed to have one small fan that they can buy at the commissary. What I've read inmates do there to survive the stifling heat is at night they sleep on the concrete floor and they take their bed sheet and get it completely wet and put that on top of them, and they sleep on the concrete floor with a wet sheet. I'm just thinking about my own bed. I have a queen-size bed. I have a 4-inch memory foam on it, and then on top of that I have a mattress pad that has something called a pillow top. I don't know, it's like a real, I've got the firm mattress, but then the real, something that's so forgiving to my aching hips and my old bones. And Donna sleeps on concrete on a little mattress, or the floor, or the concrete floor. Okay, she can have one visit a month. It's going to be on a Saturday or a Sunday, after which she will be strip searched every time. This is where I have conflicting information because I've read that if they're under, what do they call it? Close custody management. When they're on life without parole and maximum security, it's close custody. I got it written down here somewhere. I'll see it eventually. But anyway, it's really, because of her status, her designation there, anytime she leaves her cell, she has to be handcuffed behind her back and escorted by 2 guards. She goes to the visitation. She's strip searched. Oh, this is what I started to say. I've read that if you're on that high security level, you have to have your visits behind glass, and that they have to be less than 2 hours because they have only so many glass booths and a number of inmates to get through, so they get moved in and out. They don't have long. But recently, Jay Baronius posted about his FOIA request about Donna, that Harvey was visiting her, and he was the first one to get there at 9 o'clock, and he would be there from 9 to 3. That sounds like visitation in their regular visiting room, where you're allowed one brief kiss and hug at the start of your visit, and then one brief kiss and hug at the end of your visit, with no touching, hand-holding, anything in between. No passing of items, food, anything like that. So I think his information must be correct. So I think that's probably the visitation that she has once a month. Okay, hold on. Let me turn the page. Okay, so Donna's life now is strict rules and heavy isolation. A lot of women, elderly women in this circumstance, they spend up to 15 hours a day on their tablet. They can do emailing. They listen to music to try to drown out the noise. They usually bypass going out in the yard so they can avoid the volatile dynamics out there, the fighting, and the attempts at getting extorted. But I believe if they did have yard time, they would be completely separated from the other inmates, and they would do these things on a jagged schedule. They don't want it predicted, I guess, and then it would be just a short time frame. Here's another example. Donna can only have 3 showers a week when the guards decide they're to go to the shower, and that time schedule will be jagged. It'll be, maybe jagged's not the word. It'll be different. It'll be whenever they say it is. And then guess what? She gets 5 to 10 minutes in the shower, and that's it, because they have to move all these women through and get them back out before they can then let the general population back in. So keep them very segregated. They're always extremely watched because they know the opportunity for extortion and violence are there with this group of women, especially those known to be wealthy and in high-profile cases. So, okay. So something else she could do to try to cope would be to form a prison family. I'm thinking that might be kind of hard for her to do after what happened with her jail daughter, Drina, her sunshine. As you know, Drina then testified against her. Donna, in jail waiting for her trial for first-degree murder, and she's still committing crimes. She's in jail committing crimes while she's in there with trying to manufacture or fabricate stories for inmates to testify to, and unbelievable. Another thing an elderly person will do to cope with this life that they're locked into is have a hyper-rigid routine. I don't know if that's psychological, the comfort it brings that they, every day at the same time, they clean their cell. They have the same number of minutes they sit down and read. They have this very rigid, I guess that would be something Donna could still control, right? Okay, let's talk about the medical lines or the pill lines. Now, do you guys remember when Donna was in Leon County Jail and she demanded they bring her a chair to sit in while she was in line waiting to use the phone? And they said they were not going to bring her a chair. And she said, well, you're going to hear from my attorney. Like, just trying to throw her weight around. She doesn't do that anymore. Nope, if she does that, they're going to axe her visit from Harvey. That's the only thing she has in her life. So anyway, the pill lines are reportedly really long. And with her, I'm going to guess it's twice a day, earlier in the day, and then later she has to get in line and wait to get her pills. If she has anything else come up, she has to fill out a form and wait a really long time because they're notoriously understaffed medically in this prison, probably in all prisons. And she has to pay a copay, and then she pretty much just has to wait. Another thing that she does because of her age is she has periodic geriatric assessments where they look at her cognitive decline and check her blood pressure, stuff like that. I guess maybe this is a good place to tell you a little bit about my brother. First of all, in prison, the women call their health care, they call it death care. What happened with my brother was he had a very bad stomach ulcer. I wouldn't be surprised if he was drinking prison toilet wine, things that made his ulcer a lot worse. But at one point it became so painful, he felt like there was an explosion going off in his stomach. And his option was to fill out a form and wait, and he couldn't do it. And he was just crying and begging for help, and they just turned their nose up at him So in desperation to get relief, he hit his own head against something severely and caused such an injury and bleeding that they had no choice but to transfer him to a local hospital. He did that to get treatment for his ulcer. That's pretty drastic. And then what happened was, as he's leaving with the EMTs, he tells his friend in prison, get a message to my dad. So this guy calls his mother. He gives the mother my dad's phone number. She calls my dad and says there's been an incident in the prison and your son was so injured they took him by ambulance to a local hospital. So then my dad called that hospital. They wouldn't tell him anything. They wouldn't even verify my brother was there. So then my dad called me down in Florida. This was up in Ohio. My dad was so upset. So I said, well, Dad, let me make some calls and see what I can find out, and I'll call you back. So my idea was to call the hospital and ask to talk to the supervisor of nurses, which in a hospital, there's floor nurses, there's a charge nurse, the head nurse, the business manager of the floor. Then there's this nurse overall, the whole hospital. And they may not know a lot about the patients, but every shift they have an evaluation of at least a little something about every single person and what's going on with them. And I thought, I'm going to call her and appeal to her. So I did. I asked for her, and they put me on hold. And then they connected me instead to the guy in charge of prisoners that would be there. It didn't work. But when I talked to him, my dad is calling him from Ohio, and my brother's in Ohio. I'm calling him from Florida. I'm, maybe I'm not as much of a security risk. And I was extremely polite. And I said, I just hope you can understand how worried the family is, and we don't even know if he's dead or alive. Could you just even verify, is he still alive? And then the guy kind of relented, and he told me, yes, he's still alive, he's being treated, I can't remember if he said he was not critical, but, because I think my brother was critical at that point. But he just gave me that much information, and I thanked him profusely. And then I called my dad back, and my dad was like, why wouldn't they tell me anything? Why would they tell? He was so annoyed that, but anyway, that's just something I can share about the death care in prisons. Okay, now, with Donna, if she has any disciplinary infractions, they're going to take away her visits, her tablet, her phone calls, commissary, for up to 3 months. Can you imagine her eating the food? Remember when I mentioned the grits and the watery, unsweetened oatmeal? Chances are very likely their food gets infested with bugs. And I'll tell you something, they will still cook that oatmeal and serve it, even with the bugs in it. I'm pretty sure. Okay, so anyway, Donna's in prison there, and they're meeting her needs, the food, air to breathe, although it's humid and hot, and she has a roof over her head, although the facility is crumbling. It's so old. It has lots of leaks, mold, pests in the food. It's not at all a very healthy place. And the noise and the crowdedness. Okay, so what other one of her needs are we going to talk about next? Well, let's talk about a person's biological need, if you can figure out what I'm talking about, okay? In all of the prisons, I'm pretty sure this is true, all prisons, there's a total ban on all sexual activity. There's no conjugal visits. Any sexual contact between inmates results in very harsh penalties, like going to the SHU or solitary confinement. Pretty much the only thing they can do is self-gratification with a lookout, because that's not allowed either. I don't know, when I think about, you think about Donna's being treated like an animal in a cage. Even a dog might hump something. Like, to be denied your own biological needs. I guess I'll stop there, okay? Anyway, when they do this for each other, be a lookout, they create like a little tent with their blanket over their body for a little more privacy. Anyway, supposedly this is more about emotional survival than physical gratification, because they're forming protective partnerships with their prison family or cellmate. Let's see. I mentioned she can only have 3 showers a week. Can you imagine that stifling heat? Like the sweat, the BO, and then they can't, take but a shower when their guards allow them to, and not very often. Okay, here's that phrase I was looking for. Her high security status is called close custody management. Any movement outside of her cell requires her to be handcuffed behind her back and have guard escorts. That would be like if she's going to the library or medical, whereas the general population can stroll around the day room, go to the library. They don't necessarily have guards while they're doing that. But she's in this close custody management where she's watched really closely, which I already mentioned. They're watching them to make sure other inmates don't try to extort them and beat them up. Also, this part of the population under this high security, they get more frequent shakedowns or searches of their cell, and they're looking for contraband. So they'll take their locker and they'll dump it out on their bunk. Another thing they do is go through every single article of clothing, sheets, whatever, and look at the seams, because often a prisoner might monkey around with that seam and try to make a ever so small pocket and hide something in the seam. So those are scrutinized. Let's see. Access to the showers or the day room are on a tightly staggered schedule. That's the word I was looking for, staggered. The time slots are staggered. They're not regular because they're trying to keep other people from figuring out a routine, then they can get a hold of them and extort them. Okay, let's see. I think I only had a couple more things to say. Okay, this is actually on a different subject, but I had just learned this. In November of 23, when I think this would have been after Donna was arrested at the airport, and their condo was searched. And during that search, they used an electronics detection canine. I thought that was cool. I didn't know there was such a thing. Anyway, that dog did find a laptop hidden in Donna's closet underneath a mailbox, I think. And the dog also found several critical pieces of evidence, such as cameras and digital devices. That's kind of vague, but whatever that is. They also found evidence of their plans to dip to Vietnam. They had their Vietnam visas were there and their packed luggage. So let me just turn the page and see if I finished it all. Oh no, I guess this is just one more thing. Oh no. Uh-oh. I missed my time frame.